We're going to discuss the truth about franchise consultants. And if you're thinking about franchising your business, you want to know the steps involved, you want to be successful, here's a key. You as a founder, you need to lead the way, you need to lead early, you need to be involved in the franchising process. And we're going to discuss everything you need to know. Nick, time and again, when I think about franchising your business, becoming a franchisor, what it takes to grow a franchise system, as cliche as it sounds, I think about, well, now we're in fall, planting seeds, nurturing those seeds, and watching them grow and cultivating and helping them grow. And I feel that way when it comes to the franchising process. This video, it's about franchise consultants and why founders need to lead the way. GoodSpark, guys, is a franchise development company, a franchise consultant. So I'm not just talking about the competition, I'm talking about the whole ecosystem of franchising and why you as a new franchisor, when you become a franchisor, you need to lead the way. You need to be empowered. And it's not just a situation where you're going to pay for a package of services or some expert consultant or advisor is going to do everything for you. You need to be involved. We need to make strategic decisions, and you need to be empowered where you can make the right decisions at the right time. That's the foundation we're going to go into, Nick. And things we'll talk about is that there's no magic franchise sales beans or seeds. The offers that are out there that are too good to be true from franchise consultants, franchise sales experts, why founder visibility is important in the sales process, why you need to season before scaling, and how do you build a durable franchise system. So that's on tap. What are your initial thoughts?
I've used this line before, but if you and I go back to the day before we are in franchise and say, explain it, we can't do it. And I use that analogy primarily on the franchise sales structure for franchise buyers, because so many franchisors skip ahead and their positioning is franchising. But the same is true for brands that are deciding to franchise. Typically, the process they got there, they didn't think about franchising when they started their business, or if they did, it was very micro. And then customer A and customer B says, boy, have you ever thought about franchising your business? And usually that triggers them to go online and they search for, how do I franchise my business? And they find some sort of pathway into franchising their business, a consultant, an attorney, or whatever. But at the front end, because they don't understand what franchising is, if I said, or you said on call one from a business that wants to franchise, well, here's what we're going to put in your item 7, and here's what you need to be thinking about in item 19, they'd be like, excuse me? And so because of that, what you're saying in your opening statement is you have to become educated, whether you rely on a resource to become educated or you go do it yourself so that you have a point of view. And the second layer of what you said, such as like understanding the costs that go into actually franchising, you have your business. Automatically, you now own 2 businesses when you become a franchise, and each requires love. So your corporate entity requires love and your franchise entity requires love. Whatever it costs, and we've talked about it, what it costs to franchise a business, let's just use somewhere between $30,000 and $100,000, depending on where you land. Well, now you're a franchise, but now you got to go find franchisees. That has a cost. You're going to have annual legal fees. That has a cost. And if you start adding franchisees and you haven't really studied the business model, you're going to run into a capital issue, or could run into a capital issue, where it's time to go hire someone to build the support structure for your franchise that you didn't think through. And so I think the miss is there's so many consultants that say, well, you built a business, let's franchise it. What they don't do is they don't take the time to help the business walk through, what's that going to look like, what's it going to cost, and how much infrastructure do you have to build around it to build a successful franchise. And so all that being said, but my initial reaction is the miss is that businesses don't know what franchising is. The miss a long time ago is that colleges don't educate what franchising is. And so automatically on day one of thinking about, should I franchise my business, there's not enough educational toolkits out there to help a brand understand how to actually win in it nor what to do with step one and how to vet it.
Well, so to those points, right? And franchise consultants and why franchisors need to lead early. So to Nick's point, you're entering a new space. Sure, we're going to talk about the FDD, the operations manual, maybe your initial franchise sales marketing. Why am I saying, or why is this video about you need to lead the way? Because as you enter the franchise world, you're going to get mixed messages, right? You're going to be, should I speak to a franchise lawyer? Should I speak to a franchise consultant? You'll even see if you do searches on how to, franchise my business or franchise lawyer, you may see consultant ads that aren't franchise lawyers, but when you get there, it'll be, why do you need a franchise lawyer when we could have a whole team? Now, let me put this together for you. Why do you need to lead? Because when you're becoming a franchisor, in many ways, you're entering a new industry. You don't know what you don't know. And so you say, consultants will tell you, I have relationships, we'll lead the way, or we could do sales. But here's the secret. Here's the hidden secret here. When you franchise your business, it's not like, so say 120 days from now, you're legally ready to sell. It's not like you just become a franchisor and start selling. You're planting your seed, you need to nurture it. And so where I see things go wrong, and the key talking points here about the truth about franchise consultants. The truth is GoodSpark is a franchise consultant, and there's many other good ones out there. But if you're 100% dependent on them, you may be wasting capital, and you may not know you're in the wrong direction when working with the right consultant. So what I'd like to discuss, Nick, is some talking points or issues that come up in the sales process that get confusing. And for me, I'll just call them magic beans and magic seeds, which is I'll see very often a consultant say, we franchise your business, you've just franchised your business. We know the people, we have the connections, we could help you sell franchises, pay us a monthly budget of X dollars to manage your sales process, and we're going to achieve sales. My concern there is new franchisors don't know what they're buying. They don't know what they don't know yet. They sign a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year contract. They onboard. They're paying this consultant X dollars a month. And what's shocking to me is they're not even honestly communicating how much we need to spend on lead generation. We've seen it ourselves. A new franchise brand spending thousands of dollars a month for the consultant, but having no budget for franchise sales lead gen. And I have opinions there too about organic leads. And I'm not saying you need a big budget, but to me, these are you're buying magic seeds. My point of view is before making that commitment, first become a franchisor, get your foundation right, come to some conferences, whether it's our Friend Camp conferences, something else, educate and empower before you make longer term decisions or start spending capital that could be ineffective.
I think that the big statement there is there's two sides, and this is the tricky part. Side one is an emerging franchisor doesn't know what questions to ask, and even when they ask the right questions, they don't know how to judge whether that answer is correct. And so you go hire a company to franchise your business. They say, look at all these brands that we've helped. It's interesting. The consultants never talk about their failures. They always talk about.
But Nick, even I'll interrupt there. Even when people say, look at all of our successes and all these badges, you don't know if a brand was stalled. You don't know if a brand entered a place where there's white space, or eventually they worked with a certain sales organization. You don't know any of these things.
Any of that.
And it's frustrating because it's like, Charles, I worked with this consultant, and this was before we formed GoodSpark, and one of the reasons why, and they put me in touch with X and Y, and they love that consultant. Ironically, those brands they referred don't even really currently work with them and may not even be successful, but you don't know. And I'm not, this is nothing negative. My point here is your best decision as a franchisor is a step-by-step process. Get to first base first. Your FDD, your go-to-market strategy, become a franchisor. Then look at the landscape from there. Don't just jump into spending dollars on all these things, because not only may you be wasting dollars, if you as the founder are not empowered Consultants aren't going to make you successful. You have to lead the way.
Yeah, well, okay, so stay on that note too. Talked to a brand that was thinking about franchising their business. And they said, look, we've had tremendous success with our company, and we're thinking about doing this. I said, well, are you going to quit your jobs and do this full time? They're like, I don't think so. I think we'll just do it part time. I said, that's going to be your biggest challenge, is you're not fully committed to jumping into this. And so I'm using that as an example that fully jumping into franchising is exactly what you're saying, is becoming educated on what it is. It's forming your own thoughts on how you're going to grow this thing and can you grow this thing. It's looking in the mirror and saying, what does success actually look like? If brand X wants to be $1 billion company, then rule of thumb, a third of $1 billion, $333 million, is what it's going to spend to get $1 billion. Like, you spend three extra money on spend. And so when you go into this thing, it's all built on this vanity. It's very, very sexy to hear someone say, I want to buy your franchise. But there's work that's associated with that. And I think that's part of the miss. And then for brands that are encouraged to directly go into these broker networks or these sped up franchise sales groups, sale is great. Selling a franchise feels really good, but it shouldn't be the best feeling you have. The best feeling you should have is when your franchisee is successful, because if your franchisee is successful, you get money off of royalty. And that's how you build franchises. And I think that's where the things that you need to watch out for. Franchising is a term that's an umbrella. If your business does not produce return on investment, you cannot go into that umbrella yet. You got work to do to perfect your business. Secondly, selling franchises sounds wonderful. You have to be in the business of successful franchisees. That's how you're going to make money. And so it gives you a lens on how you need to look at this thing, so that when you're cutting the cards, when someone comes in and says, for $1,500 a month, we're gonna scale your brand to new heights. No, they're probably trying to get you to sign a multi-year contract, take your money, and if it works, great. They're happy because they'll have incentives. If it doesn't work, you're there holding the bag. You lost a lot of money. You lost a lot of time. And you never really put the energy into putting the right infrastructure in place, which is exactly why you need to be educated before you go into this thing.
Right. So founder first, and let's continue on this, because right, if you're watching this video and you're like, hey, I don't know franchising, and I need to trust coaches and experts, and GoodSpark's here, and that's fine. And there's other companies out there. What do I mean by founder first? Let's dive a little deeper. When you become a franchise, the goal is to, certainly for GoodSpark clients, season your franchise offering. And again, back to planting a seed. You become a franchisor in 120 days. Okay, so now your first level of sales should be to the people you know, customers, family, friends that are a good fit. That's the organic reach of your brand, maybe your social media, your social influence. That's your seasoning phase, whether it's the first 12 months or 18 months. That's where you as a founder, you're really learning franchising on the ground floor. You're getting better insight on who you could trust or not, and who has valuable resources and not. And the key is to keep building your brand assets, right? Your website, your founder story, your franchise sales discovery process. And what's going to make that better? It's going to be that first conversation with a prospective franchisee where the call doesn't go well at all. Maybe they're not a good fit. You have no idea what to say. And that forces you to recalibrate. What is our process? What is our qualification? What are we looking for? And then that calibration. And if you have a good partner, they're going to help guide you through it. But it takes time. It's just like that seed is not going to grow in 2 days. It takes 12 months or whatever period. It's going to take that 12 months to season your franchise offering. And so the trap when you're working with consultants or thinking of hiring them, when they pre-sell you the big packages of everything, franchise your business, legal, operations manual, sales process, website copy. You're really disconnected as a founder. You're not a part of that. And they don't know you. They don't share your heart. So really what you're going to have when you quote unquote become a franchise is something that's generic. And now worse, if you rely on them to qualify your leads and take calls for you, you're more disconnected from the process. You don't know what's not working and you can't recalibrate, right? So the idea is let's go to market the best way possible. Just buy that. Don't buy a big package beyond that, or don't rely on promises, relationships, sales organizations. Get to the market the right way. Examine those organic leads, learn from that process, come to webinars, live streams, there's coaching, right? So now you can make those decisions. You get that feedback. You should be looking at your real launch 12 months from now. That's when your foundation should be rooted. You should have a good version 2.0 of your website that's not generic like all these other franchise brands. You should have a founder story that you feel comfortable with, and knowing the first 3 shoots of your founder story did not work out. And you get to a point 12 months from now where you've built up an understanding and cadence, which gets the other point that frustrates me so much. People like reverse the process. Come to us and we're going to reverse engineer who your good fit franchisees are. And here's our franchise sales organization. And here, you don't know what you need yet until you become that franchise. And what I will tell you is this: when you buy everything up front before you enter the franchise world, you're not in the driver's seat. Now you're 100% committed to that bet and you're dependent on that resource. When you enter the right way, you can make the strategic capital smart decisions. To this point about leading as a founder, Nick, this is such a frustration point for me. I speak to so many founders that, they'll talk about their process hasn't been successful. And I'm like, well, what did you learn during the discovery process when you're speaking to those leads, questions they have, where are their gaps in your business? And they're like, Charles, well, I really wasn't that involved. The consultant was doing my sales because they said they're the experts. And once they qualify people through, it'll eventually get to me because I'm the CEO. And I look at the client, I said, look, let's have a practical conversation. You're a brand new franchise company. You're a mom and pop in the franchise world, which could be an advantage. Your first couple of franchisees are going to buy because of who you are and their confidence in you. So if you were buying your own franchise, wouldn't you want to be speaking to you versus someone who's selling? And again, to the point of founders need to lead early in the process. What's your take there, Nicholas?
I mean, that was great dialogue. You went on a great tear there.
Because it bothers me.
Well, I can tell the frustrations in the right place. Here's what I would say. The question that a business needs to ask first is, or a statement is, talk me out of franchising. Say that statement to a consultant when you're going through this and hear what their answer is. They're like, I really can't. Your business is great. You're good. Well, read the room, because a good coach is going to tell you why you don't want to do this. Similar to like when you're interviewing for a job, a good job interviewer is going to talk you out of why you don't want to work there. And if you end up saying, yes, I want in, then at least the transparency was there. The pain point that I see out of any franchise that's now gone through franchising their business, has gotten out of the gates, they're 2 years in, they haven't sold a franchise. If I said on the count of 3, tell me the word that frustrates you the most, they would say transparency. They wish the people that they worked with would have told them a little bit more on what to expect than saying, yeah, you could have 15 units in the first year. Go sign up for this franchise expo. There's going to be leads galore there.
Or sign a contract where we do everything for you. I was so frustrated, Nick. It was a new client looking for solutions. And my answer is you have to go through a discovery process. I did recommend come to a Friend Camp conference or a CampFire coaching. And the consultant said, in 5 years, we'll be selling the company for 20 million. And I'm like, to the client, I'm like, you know, the consultant's not a novice. They're, you know, they're middle aged, so they've been in the industry more. If it's that easy to just take an existing emerging brand and have a $20 million exit 5 years from now, why haven't they done it 10 times over?
Why aren't we doing that?
Right.
I think
Well,
that's a good idea. Wait, where's this consultant? Can we get him to help us
he
do this?
did say he did tell the client 20 million.
I love it. That sounds great. Yeah, that's the sad part about this industry is there's a lot of false dreams created. The other sad part of the industry is I can think of a former mutual brand of ours where I helped them get unit 1 done. They were stuck in the mud. They got that unit done, and it took a lot of energy to get that done. And at that point, they still blame me, not the people that franchise their business and set their expectations wrong. And
Well,
that's the sad part is because and that the word good, what resonates with me, and this is not to sell anybody. Good is starting on the human qualities, which I think you and I start with. And therefore, the words that we share to brands come from our head and our heart and our gut. And if they choose to work with us, fantastic. If they don't, my hope is that by continuously giving honest feedback to businesses, if they choose to go another route and it doesn't work out, we're the recovery, not the reason.
yeah, and look, back to expectations, Nick. I think that's the key, right? You're franchising your business. In our opinion, your expectation should be to season your franchise offering over the next 24 months, which may mean over the next 24 months, if you have 2, 3, 4 franchisees, that's a win, right? And if they're doing well, that's where you want to be. But also know this, you could add a ton of capital on top of that. It's not going to move the needle because, again, you have to nurture the seed. And I think that's where there's a lot of, that's where there's a lot of confusion in the industry. Another factor, founder first, right? Theme. Franchise consultants are great. By the way, there's great organizations out there. Definitely check them out. But you have to be founder first because unless every founder that I've seen succeed at very big multiples and many years later, they developed their franchise, they learned what they didn't know, they realized it's not rocket science, it's business. They gained more insights into the industry, conferences, events, and were able to make smart strategic decisions. They took a go slow approach that turned out to be a fast growth approach if you look at it from the right time period. And they understood the first 2 or 3 years we're seasoning our offering, we're building a base of successful franchisees that are going to validate. As they did that, they empowered themselves to learn more about the franchise sales discovery process, getting involved themselves, then making good strategic decisions, capital smart. So as you're spending your dollars, we want to know, even if your franchise sales are low, 2 years from now, what are the brand assets did you build? Do you have a couple of franchisees that validate? Have you started to develop your brand storing in repeatable media? Is your website evolving? Have you built out an ecosystem and community? And I guess for me, as we go through these things, what we're talking about is you as a founder, if you're not leading the way, if you're just relying on the consultants or the coaches, you're leaving yourself exposed. There's some great organizations out there. And guys, also too, from a self-serving purpose, GoodSpark, we're a franchise development company. Our franchise your business services, there's different tiers based on what you need. And I would even say start with the lowest, right? Enter the world the right way. Make sure you're working with the right partners. Then you could grow from there. We can make smart decisions. In fact, I love that because once you see under the hood, then we can make confident decisions together, which gets to come to some conferences and events. There's great organizations out there, the IFA, a bunch of other things. Come to our Frank Camp conferences, meet other franchisors. They're playbook focused. They're not just meet and greet. We're going to roll up our sleeves and do some hard work. I think that's very beneficial. So to do what we say, like GoodSpark's really based on education platform, coaching, and our Fran Camp conferences. So definitely, if you're interested, reach out and take advantage of that. Nick, leading out, I will say this: we at our last Fran Camp, there were some amazing stories. Right, we were focused on brand story, but one of the key speakers was talking about how he was in a completely different industry, very successful, acquired acquired an existing business, turned it into a franchise. And when you look at their growth and they're telling their story, they're going to be north of 100, 200 units, maybe over the next 12 months. But what you don't see behind the scenes was they started off slow and had frustrations where they only had 2 or 3 franchisees. And those are the strategic points where if you go the wrong way, you're stuck. And if you go the right way with honest advice, you could get there as a founder. What's your thoughts on that?
The takeaways are very simple. Protect the franchisees, protect the brand is their statement. That statement means protect the franchisees means you're protecting their expectations and you're driving those expectations to success. So that's unit level economics. And protecting the brand means here's how we continue to set up a good business. You build a moat around your business so that the business structure is sound, so that when franchisees buy in, they're actually buying into something that is valuable. That's statement one. If I think about a strong growth goal, and let me back up before I answer that. The buyers say this is how they buy. Vision, that's founder, you better be able to tell me what the vision of your business is. And if you haven't thought through that, get through that. Vision, point of differentiation on your product. Even if you're in a category that has multiple competitors, make sure you have a clear point of differentiation on how you're different, be able to answer that. Cost to get in, how much you can make has to be sound. That's in the dead center. Where are you growing and why are you growing there? That's number 4. Like, are you going to grow in concentric circles so you can support your franchisees? Are you okay with the shotgun approach? Does it not matter? And validation. And if you don't have franchisee 1, your customers better be raving fans about your brand. So now to growth. You have 1 unit today. You franchise. You sell 1 franchise over the next 2 years. Not a big deal. You have 2. In year 3, you double, you have 4. In year 4, you double, you have 8. In year 5, you double again, you have 16 at year 5. This is almost close to the Lane story. 16 units in year 5, 32 in year 6, 74, if I'm doing the math right, in year 7, and now you're well over 100 in year 8. And so sometimes, like, that was not a bad pathway to get there, to get the engine going, build support, infrastructure, protect the franchisee, protect the brand. That's the Lane's model. And so what you hear there is time and patience and energy and optimizing the business model to constantly be strong enough for your franchisees. And so I've had brands. There's one that I think of all the time. I remember sitting in a meeting with their CEO, and he goes, "We'll sell 100 units in the next 5 years." And he wanted that in all the press releases. 10 years later, they sold 100 units. Not 5. 5, they were at 50.
Right.
The problem with saying 100 and being at 50 is then that CEO who's no longer there would walk in the room and his team was demotivated because they didn't sell 100. You guys failed. You guys failed. You guys failed. You guys failed. So he demotivated a team, which then allowed a family office to come pick it up, put the right infrastructure in place, and then it takes off. And so that's where, like, expectation setting starts with the vision of the founder. If at the very least, if you don't want to understand franchising and the total, at least solidify your vision and have a clear statement of saying, this is what I would like to accomplish over the next 5 years, and use that as your North Star as you go forward.
Yeah. And so it turned out like slow growth was strategic. So guys, the truth about franchise consultants, well, they could be a critical resource for you when you're franchising your business and when you're growing. But you need to keep yourself in the driver's seat. As a founder, you need to lead the way. That means strategic decisions, capital smart decisions, not putting all of your bets into one basket, and make structured decisions. Enter the market the right way, and then identify the pathways for growth. Don't try to do everything all at once. Don't try to pre-package everything, and be on the lookout for people offering magic seeds, franchise sales seeds, or trying to make their role more important than your journey and your learning in the process. And for sure, guys, check out FranCamp conferences or comment on these videos. And so we're going to have fun on our next video. So
Happy franchising.